Hey everyone, welcome back. This is episode 18 of CNY Conversations. I'm Jason Klink, your host. This is going to be a fun one. I'm here. My first returning guest to the podcast is Nick Johnson of Ataviz Consulting, and we decided to do this episode based on a venture he has put forth that infuses data analytics into fantasy football. And I thought this was super cool. And with the football season starting to ramp up, preseason as we record this is getting going. The new NFL season starts in a few weeks, and I'm sure people's fantasy football leagues are going to start ramping up in another week or two. I thought this would be a really cool conversation, fun for the both of us to talk about this. So, Nick, welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, sounds great, Jason. Can't wait.
So, give you a little background with Nick. Nick is the data scientist, a data analytics consultant, has his own company in Ataviz, partner of mine in a venture that I have going on. So he's everything data analytics, and he's working with another individual that they've created this infusion of data analytics into fantasy football. So, Nick, why don't you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so the company is called Basement Brewed Fantasy Football. So you can certainly, check them out. I believe it's basementbrewedff.com. It's run by a guy named Mikey, my client, and he had this company, well before me. He had put up, all of his fantasy football analytics. He was doing it himself. And all I did was I took some of his visualizations, created some new dashboards for them. So, make them look a little bit prettier, add some more information to them, as well as take his process and optimize it so that he wasn't gathering all this data by himself and, going to all these websites to, make his own spreadsheets. I took a 20-hour a week process and made it about 90 seconds.
That's awesome.
Now he can spend more of his time actually doing the analytics and not just, copy pasting, looking things up, things like that.
That is, that's just interesting to me because I've done a few fantasy football leagues in the past, and for me it was just fun. I knew for the most part I was making a donation to somebody else's winnings, except for 1 year. 1 year I finished in second place, and I got the second place winnings, which was I think the last year that I did it. But typically it was going online and going to ESPN or CBS Sports, looking at their fantasy football picks, their insight, and trying to make a great judgment from there. How does, I can imagine how data analytics replaces all of that research, but how does a layperson, so to say, that's in a fantasy football league look at data analytics versus just what's put online? What's better one over the other?
Well, what's put online already is data analytics. It's just,
Right.
depending on where you go, it tends to be kind of generalized.
Yeah.
And the good data analytics, the more in-depth stuff is typically something you have to go somewhere else for, you have to pay for in some
Right.
way, shape, or form. They give the general, here's how many yards to expect, and they actually do the prediction for you. And that's a machine learning model that, ESPN, CBS, Fox, they've all created this. I'm actually working on that myself. I'm creating my own machine learning model separate from my client that, I want to see how it performs over the next season. So I'm still working on that. It takes into account everything you could possibly imagine. It takes into account the weather, the turf that they play on, whether it's grass or artificial turf, the type of stadium, what time zone they're in. All the amount of columns that have been created in this data set that are just completely new pieces of data that are combinations of other things that are put together is staggering. So I've been working on that for about a year, and right now it's at a point where it's almost usable. Not that it's not usable, but I'm still trying to tweak and improve it over time. So what I'm going to do is kind of tweak it this season, see what my predictions do versus player scores throughout the season, and kind of tweak it from there. Add and get rid of things that I deem necessary, and hopefully by next year, it'll be a usable model that I can put out there.
So with that, is it something that, it's kind of like pay per use kind of situation, or is this just somebody that has a league that's going to pay for the access to the analytics to infuse it into their league?
Right. So that's typical. So there's a couple of upsides and downsides. So this is typically, at least the way my client does it, you pay per month and, you have access to this throughout.
Yeah.
So it's typically individual. And unfortunately, when you have something like this, you're not going to get a lot of word of mouth because you don't want to give your competition
Right.
analytics.
Yeah.
He's in a unique spot where he really can't rely on word of mouth to promote his business. All of his clients, they're not going to go out and say how good their sources are. If they're winning leagues, they're not going to give that up.
Yeah, it's true.
Matter of fact, they're going to claim, plead the fifth. I don't know. I'm doing it myself.
Do you think that this type of technology, the machine learning and data analytics, could it go outside of fantasy football? I mean, there's other fantasy leagues. There's fantasy sports betting. I mean, do you see this really growing into all of these other pathways?
Oh, absolutely. And it already exists. I would say certainly fantasy football is one of the more popular fantasy leagues,
right.
By probably a long shot. So, it's definitely going to be more prevalent there than in other fantasy leagues, but it's still definitely out there and definitely doable.
Yeah.
Especially with the amount of statistics that we have available to us and all of the crazy metrics, especially in like baseball. And even, coming into the NBA with, PER and player efficiency and all that. The metrics are getting so complex, but on top of being complex, they're so easily and readily available that you can keep doing a lot of things with them and developing new metrics that are better at predicting how players are doing, how they're going to do in the future.
It's interesting you brought that up, and I know it kind of segues from fantasy sports, but I'm a huge baseball fan, big Yankees fan, except for this year, and there's been proponents and anti-proponents, I guess you could say, on either side of the coin when it comes to baseball. And baseball's fully embraced analytics. Every team's embraced analytics, but it's almost taken away from the traditional play of the game. And I just saw an article yesterday, not an article, but a news blurb of a former Yankee player that was traded away, and he slammed the team because Brian Cashman and the Yankees, he said, are running the team more by analytics than there's actually baseball skills being taught. Do you? I mean, what's your argument for and against both sides of that?
There's a healthy balance, especially when it comes to something like sports. Sports is very 50-50 art and science. There's certain things that happen in sports that, you can't write them in a movie. I'm a Vikings fan. You've got the Minneapolis Miracle. There's no shot that Diggs caught that pass. What was look at the analytics, what was the percentage completion rate for that? I mean, it was next to nothing. And even if he caught it, there's no shot he gets in the end zone, right? But he did. So there are certain things that are just not predictable, and all analytics models are, have a certain, confidence interval to an extent, where they're, this percent correct, or, you can trust it to this percentage in some way, shape, or form. But, sports is, very much an art. So I think you can definitely go too far one way or the other. You can definitely be too analytical where you just look at the analytics, whatever they say go, and there's no thought process involved other than reading them. But I don't think that's the way to go either. They should be informing your decisions, not necessarily making the decisions for you.
Yeah, and when it goes to like baseball, I mean, there's commentators that say all the time it's difficult to predict baseball because you never know how things are going to happen. But it's so interesting to me. You go 20 years back, and it's the catchers and the pitcher and catcher are calling signs, and the managers are calling signs, and they're just reacting to the game. To now, where you get a player like Aaron Judge, and he'll have an at bat, and he'll go back to the dugout, bring out an iPad, and start looking at the swing and looking at the pitch and all of that. It's so much more tech heavy than it was so long ago, and it's interesting to see. I'm sure that most sports are like, even car racing's probably like that now. What is the probability of winning this race or running out of tires or whatever it might be? Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, even with things like car racing, you've got people that have certain tendencies, and that's where analytics is really good, especially in sports, is to analyze a particular player's tendencies. I mean, you see quarterbacks, go back and pull out the iPad, or I think with them, it's the Microsoft tablet. I think that Microsoft has the monopoly on the NFL. But in general, I mean, you have players going back because they're analyzing tendencies of what's currently happening.
Yeah.
And you talk about like the halftime adjustments and things like that. That's where things like these analytics that aren't just like after the game looking at tape, but analytics that are real time, that are happening right now, that can
Right.
not just inform your decision making for next game, but can inform the decision making for the next play or the next at bat.
So I tried to think about, because like I'm a big proponent of technology,
Mhm.
and I tried to think about how can data analytics, both in fantasy sports and the athletes themselves or the teams themselves, use this technology, use machine learning, use data analytics to make it more fun, to make it more challenging, to really the top players, the top athletes, the top teams are all going to rise to the top. Do you think that this really kind of it shows where the sporting events, the fantasy sports, are really headed, and what's on the horizon that could really affect how these games are played?
Well, I mean, you've got instant replay and all that. That's really having an
Right.
effect on all sporting events, and
Oh,
there's
yep.
definitely two very polarizing sides of using instant replay and things like that. Does it slow the game down? Does it affect the tempo? But you've got, I mean, people that are talking about even not necessarily replacing referees and umpires with some sort of AI or robot that can tell. But I mean, you're already using things like that in like tennis, where you're calling out of bounds. You can actually go back and view the replay and and use it in that sense. They're using it in soccer.
Right.
So it's definitely coming to the forefront, and it's going to come to a point where I think it's going to be too much, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Sports are it's meant to be kind of an art. Do you really want everything being judged to the millimeter, as opposed to judged to the feel of the game and what the game should be?
Yeah.
Every year the NFL adjusts what it catches. It's based on what happened previously. So it's like, okay,
Right.
so this year this is a catch. Last year it knocked a team out of the playoffs because it wasn't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's something to be said for consistency. Kind of sticking to somewhat of what the roots are. It can definitely improve certain aspects, but when you become completely reliant on it, I mean, you might as well just have robots playing and refereeing the games, and what fun is that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it just takes the athleticism but and thinking about like instant replay. So they infused instant replay into Major League Baseball.
Mhm.
And you know what? I know it may lengthen out the game, especially in football, it may lengthen out the game, but you know what? The officials on the field are human, and they're gonna make a mistake. So if you have an opportunity to right a wrong, so to say, and they made the wrong call and the instant replay shows the opposite, why not? Because the right call wasn't made.
Right.
And
Well, to that extent, I mean, if so, take that thought right there, and
yep,
just because I know more about the NFL than baseball personally,
sure.
um, and you've got the NFL, the way that their replay system works right now. You've got two challenge flags.
Yep.
If the first one's correct, you get it back.
Yep.
What if both are correct? Why wouldn't you get one back after that?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
realistically,
It's
so
valid.
there it is coming to a point where you are balancing, length of the game and all these things versus what they can do. But if it's all about getting the call right, then wouldn't you get two challenge flags? And if you get the first correct, you keep getting that flag back because clearly the refs are messing up.
Yeah.
Are the refs somehow stopping at two mistakes per game per side? I mean, no, they're not. But if you can challenge everything, what's that going to do to the game, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you look at it, like, s- I wonder if the NFL will be able to find a way to speed up games like MLB did, because MLB put things into place that have really they've taken games that have gone 3.5, 4.5 hours ish
Mhm.
down to almost 2.5 because of pitch clocks and the catcher is calling the pitch by a button versus with a responder in the hat
Mhm.
to ultimately try to speed up the game. And I know with the NFL, I mean the games are what 3-4 hours long at times, depending on how close they are.
Yeah.
And for sports fans like you and I, whatever, it's 3 hours. We get to watch our team play.
Yeah. Make it
Um,
6 hours. Why not?
Yeah, right. I mean, it's really the kind of the excitement of the game, especially when you get down to the last quarter and maybe it's a tight game
Right.
and everybody's trying to win. I just don't know if the NFL could make tweaks that would ultimately speed up the game, especially using technology or machine learning or data analytics because really it's just the pace of the game depending on how close it is.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with each game itself. I don't know if there really would be a good way of speeding up like the NFL. I know in terms of things like in terms of basketball. I don't know if you watch the TBT, the tournament. So it's a lot of the ex NBA players or former
Right.
college players that go in. They have a great rule there, and it's going to slip the Elam ending. Thank you. Where I think it's with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, they turn the clock off, and the team with the highest score, you add X number of points to their score, and then it's first team to that number. So it gets
Wow.
rid of all the fouling at the end of the game. There's no more hack a shack type things going on where you're just fouling everybody to try to slow the game down. All of a sudden now we're racing to the score,
Yeah.
and every single game ends in a game winner.
See, I didn't know that. I never heard that. That's pretty ingenuitive.
It's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
and this little tournament that started, I want to say 5 years ago, give or
Yeah, I
take,
think you're right. Yep.
it's become huge. I mean, it's on, it's on national TV now. I follow it all the time. The games are fantastic, just because of that. Like even if it's a quote unquote blowout, you're still ending in a game winner. There's still a made
Right.
basket to end the game, and not somebody holding the ball with 10 seconds left next to the half court line.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah, I hadn't heard that. Ultimately the world's spinning awfully fast. Everybody is very conscious of their time. They try to cram as much in as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And using this type of technology, even when it comes to fantasy sports, I mean, a lot of people just don't have the time to do the research, to go online and research their team, research the players. Funny story is when at my first time in a fantasy league, I went in and picked all Miami Dolphin players, even though the team was awful. And I'm like, nope, I'm just going to pick my players because that's my team. Not even considering this is a competition. You need, I learned a hard lesson. I get my chops busted from the other players in the league, in the fantasy league, about doing that. So the next year, that's when I started taking some time to do a little research on who are the top players, who should you draft, and using this type of this type of technology really kind of cuts down on the amount of time that you have to do research if you decide to invest in or use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. You've got somebody who's spending their days. I mean, during the NFL season, he's spending his week completely doing all of these analytics, all of these write-ups for you. And he's not and what makes his his analytics kind of unique is that it's not somebody like me doing it, where if I were doing it because of my background, I would, say, here are the people to start, here are the people to sit, and there's not a whole lot. What he does, which is really unique, is that he's giving you the analytics for each player. He's giving you a write-up of each player, and he's not necessarily saying start this over that. He's just giving you all the information for you to be able to make the decision yourself. He's just cutting down. There's no research you have to do. He's done everything. He gives a great write-up for each player every week. I'm making some cool graphs and charts and visualizations for people to use. I've got a great tool out there right now that his clients are using for the NFL draft, for fantasy draft, where you go in and it's a big visualization. It's a list of players. All of his analytics are on one side. You just got to hover over the beer emoji, and his analytics pop up. And you can select each player as they're picked, and the actual graph or the actual chart gets smaller and smaller, and you can pick your players that way. It's huge. It changes every single pick. It takes into account average draft position, and it gives you is the 7th pick the best for these players right now, and it literally changes every single pick. That's a fantastic tool. We're really happy with the way it's going right now. I'm still tweaking it here and there. It's the first year it's been out, so there's still tweaks I have to make, every once in a while, but it's going really well. I've got, he's got a great heat map that he was doing well before me. I just took it and made it a little bit different, added some parts to it, made it a little bit more user-friendly and gave some more information. And I added some things like touchdown regressions, where you have players who have X number of yards. Are they due for a touchdown? That's a big statistic that people use to help predict their fantasy lineup. So I've got a nice graph where you've got what the touchdown line should be. Are they sitting above or below the line? And does that mean they have a better probability of scoring this week?
That's so cool. So, thinking about, so we're in Central New York, a lot of NFL fans, mostly Buffalo Bills, some New York Giants fans, maybe a few New York Jets fans, and then the rest of us stragglers on the outside.
Right.
What are some of the things you're seeing? What are some of the predictions that you, knowing the game, knowing what the analytics you put together, what are you seeing for this? Who are the cream of the crop that's really going to be the elite players in the league, and who are just going to flop, even though there's been so much talk about them?
I mean, it's literally changing all the time. What I'm going to do while you're, asking that question is I'm going to pull up the chart that I use that I actually make for him. I don't want to pull it up and put it on screen because it is a paid chart for his clients. But I'm not the fantasy football expert. I just play one on TV.
Yeah, I slept in a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Exactly. I will say I'm learning quite a bit because making all these visualizations, I'm kind of by osmosis, having some of these. This information that he's writing, it's kind of seeping in a little bit. But I can't say that I'm, by any stretch of the imagination, an expert on this.
Sure.
So I'm going to pull up his chart on my side and see if we can't get a little bit in here. So actually, that's changed quite a bit since yesterday. So this draft sheet that I just pulled up here on my screen, it changes every single day. Wow. So the average draft position of each player changes every single day. He has a tier system where you've got tier 1, tier 2 players, things like that. And for the most part of the summer, there were 3 tier 1 players. In terms of if you're drafting top of the draft, the 3 players you're taking are Justin Jefferson, my boy from the Vikings, great team, Christian McCaffrey,
okay,
and Jamar Chase. Those were the 3 tier 1 players for almost the entire summer. I just pulled this up today, and all of a sudden there's 6.
Oh, all right.
So we've had a few that have been added in. Cooper Kupp,
okay,
Austin Eckler,
okay,
Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill, my boy Tyreek.
Yes.
All right.
These are changing every single day. They get updated. I update it from my side here, and I've got a nice little graph at the bottom. I really wish I could show this. I've got a nice graph at the bottom of this that actually tracks their average draft position over the course of the summer. So you can see, is their average draft position trending up, meaning they're being picked higher.
Okay.
Now versus they were in July.
Okay.
And you can see that. You can compare players, see, what the trends look like, and kind of make your decision that way. Again, it gives the power to the player so you can still make your own decisions. And it's not just pick this guy, pick this guy, pick that guy that, ESPN, CBS, Fox, they have their ranking system.
Yep.
Which, it's certainly built on a, multi-million-dollar model, that,
sure,
plenty of people have had their hand in is definitely a good model. It certainly does perform well. But it gives you kind of limited information and kind of just makes the decision for you. You can auto draft and it just kind of picks it, which is, if that's how you want to play, all power to you. I don't believe that's how you should play. And if you do, if you're in a league that I'm in and you're like that, you're going to hear it from me. You're going to get all this smack talk.
Yeah.
Something like this, where it gives you a tier system.
Yep.
It's like, okay, here's this tier of players. And, what does your team need? And you have the analysis for each player. And you can see, okay, this player's been trending up. This player's been trending down. Even though they're about even right now, maybe I want the player that's trending up right now, because obviously, that could be a tiebreaker in terms of your decision making. So,
sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's man, that's a lot of fun. And I was just thinking how too. I saw a news blurb a day or two ago, and Gronkowski. He said there was a blurb that there was a certain former coach of his that could draw him out of retirement, for the 3rd time.
Right.
But I tell you what, when Gronk was playing, Gronk was healthy, and I had him on 2 of my fantasy teams. He was the sole reason why I had any success on my fantasy teams because he would put up some sick points between yardage and catches and touchdowns. And having that kind of information in front of you to make it, like you said, if they're trending up in the draft, then those are probably the players you want to pay attention to versus the ones that may be sinking because, it could be as simple as they're not having a great training camp and, maybe injuries and so on. But it's, oh God, there's just so many players and so many different variables that goes into this. And it really depends, I guess, on the league that you're playing in.
Oh yeah, because there's tons of different types of leagues. I mean, besides just the scoring, the PPR, non-PPR, there's all kinds of leagues. There's two quarterback leagues. There's keeper leagues, dynasty leagues, vampire leagues. There's all kinds of crazy leagues out there that I haven't even played in some of them because some of them are so new. I hadn't even heard of them until I started working with Mikey in Basement Brute Fantasy Football. I didn't know what a vampire league was. I still don't really, but I know it exists.
Yeah. It's.
I mean, it comes down to having all the information to make these right decisions and knowing, okay, maybe I need a tight end this pick, but maybe right now all the tight ends that are available, even if I pick the best tight end available right now, I could pick another tight end next round that wouldn't really be much of a drop. So it's kind of the similar value, but a round later, and I could spend the pick right now to get something else I might need, even if it's like a backup wide receiver.
Right.
It's valuing each pick and what you're getting at that pick versus what you can get in later rounds as well. Because once you take somebody like a Gronkowski or a Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews or Darren Waller, once you take that great tight end, once you get out of those first handful of tight ends, all of a sudden there's a big drop off.
Yeah.
So even if you need a tight end, you might be better waiting 1, 2, 3 rounds because you're going to get a similar value tight end there. And picking something else up where you can get a high value running back wide receiver that would really do a lot better for your team.
That's interesting. So you're picking a team. Do you pick your team? You pick the quarterback first and surround the team around the quarterback, or do you pick a defense?
Oh, quarterback way before there's actually some leagues I won't even pick a defense in the draft.
Wow. Okay.
Really, if you want to do well in a fantasy football league, typically you want to stream the defenses and the kickers. So every single week you just pick up a new defense. Pick them up where they. I know a lot of people like to pick a defense and they just stick with the defense all year. But really, defense is very matchup heavy.
Yeah. Yep.
So I mean, there's times I don't pick a defense at all. I can't say I remember a time when I ever picked a quarterback number one. I don't know if I ever have.
Okay.
But it's all about, in my eyes, it's all about running back, wide receiver. That's the majority of your point. I mean, I will say last year I had Josh Allen. Josh Allen, alone won me a whole bunch of games last year.
Yeah.
But I'm still not picking him number one.
No kidding.
I happen to get, it was last year, but I'm pretty sure I happened to get him in the second or third round. So second round, sure. Depending on what the quarterback is and what the rankings look like at that point in time. But, sometimes it might not be till the fifth or sixth round. If those super top tier quarterbacks are gone, there might not be a big drop off if I pick, I'm trying to think back in the day, like a Matt Ryan and, all these players that were kind of that middle of the league, that Phillip Rivers type, quarterback where, they're not, well, I guess Phillip sometimes was, top tier, but depending on the year, if once those top 2 or 3 quarterbacks go, you might want to wait a little bit.
It's interesting. So if the analytics are for you, then if the analytics are recommending a quarterback, but you typically go with wide receiver, running back, you're still going to, and not to give away your secrets, but is that still kind of the route that you take?
I mean, to an extent. I mean, I'm looking at the draft rankings that he has up right now. He doesn't have a quarterback until round 3, I don't think.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, that's the thing. He doesn't do it by ranking. So, I'm trying to sit here and count in my head while I'm talking to you at the same time. But I'm looking at it and maybe late second round, but every pick for the first maybe 20 picks is all wide receiver, running back, and Travis Kelce.
Interesting. Interesting. You're teaching me a lot here. So, final question.
Yes.
Who's going to the Super Bowl this year, in your opinion?
Oh God, do I stay homer or do I get away from it? I still like Kansas City in the AFC. they're strong. I would love to see Buffalo.
I think Buffalo. I think this is Buffalo's year. They've been
I
on the
really like
outside
it.
way too long.
I'd really like it to be. I'm a Vikings
Yep.
fan. In terms of AFC though, I certainly don't have an AFC favorite. If
Yep.
Buffalo does well, I'm happy with it unless they play my team.
Yep.
In the NFC, I would love to see Minnesota. Am I being a homer? Absolutely.
Sure.
I'll tell you right now, losing Dalvin Cook, but now switching over to a more pass heavy offense.
Yeah.
Kirk's got a rocket.
Yeah.
If he can, cut down getting sacked and cut down some of the fumbles, if he can get that ball out quick, we've got obviously a great wide receiver core.
Yeah.
Madison is a great pass catching running back. So if we kind of rely on that and our defense plays better, we have a shot. Might be a slim one. I'm not putting money on it, but I'd love to see my Vikings in it. Other than that, the Eagles are strong. I'm looking at the rankings here. San Francisco's going to be strong, but I don't know how about their quarterback. I don't know if there's a clear cut team this year in the NFC, especially.
I agree. I still think Buffalo's due, and Buffalo has the team to get to the Super Bowl if they can get past KC.
I don't know if there's a third team in the AFC.
What's that?
I don't know if there's a third team in the AFC. I don't know if there's a third AFC team to even worry about. Baltimore. But
Baltimore maybe Cincy.
Since he's got the talent. It depends on how they play, but they've got the talent.
Yeah. So it's definitely going to be a fun year. Unfortunately for Aaron Rodgers, he went to the Jets where old quarterbacks go to die.
Yes, and I look forward to seeing that as a Vikings fan. I look forward to watching him do horribly this year.
Yeah, he should have went and talked to Brett Favre first before deciding to do that.
Yes, you think so, but I don't know. They got Dalvin Cook now too, so they've got they basically have an old Packers lineup with Dalvin Cook. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, I appreciate taking the time to talk a little fantasy football, fantasy sports, infused with data analytics. I think it's fun. Say what you will about technology and machine learning, whatever. It's still fun, and that's the point. It's all to have fun, no matter what way you're picking your teams or not picking your teams. So, I wish you the best of luck with your fantasy team when it comes around. And I plan on releasing this podcast recording right before the season starts. So, everybody has their information to decide if they want to invest in data analytics to pick their teams. But once again, I thank you. It's great to have you on the podcast again, and I'm sure we'll come up with another topic to talk about in the near future.
Absolutely. I'll figure something else out I'm doing with data analytics.
There you go. Well, everyone, don't hesitate to reach out to Nick. Drop a comment on this podcast. We'd like to hear what your thoughts, who your picks are, and what you think about data analytics and fantasy sports and fantasy football. Make sure you share it with anyone that might get any value out of it. Just trying to build this small community around this small podcast and help each other out. So with that, everybody, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a great day.